and welcome everyone to another Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. My name is Nina and I am very excited about our guests today, Linda Malek and Lisa Murtha. Before we jump in, wanted to give a quick background on myself. I am a consultant and design researcher at Kaiser Permanente's Health Innovation Studio, where I designed and build digital health solutions. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce our guests for today, Linda Malek and Lisa Murtha of Moses and Singer LLP. Welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Nina. Really nice to be here.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have the opportunity to join you all today.
Wonderful. So I think, a great place to start. Can you both please tell us a little bit more about yourself and your specialty or area of focus? And Linda, maybe we can start with you.
Sure, thank you. I am a lawyer at Moses and Singer, and we are based in New York, but work with clients all over the country. I head up both their healthcare practice as well as their privacy and cybersecurity practice. I've been at the firm for going on 22 years now, so a long time. And we work with a lot of different kinds of organizations, all across the digital health spectrum, as well as in healthcare technology generally. And my areas of specialty are in the context of data privacy and security, clinical research issues, lab regulation, and other types of regulation that really govern the industry.
And then we'll go to you, Lisa.
Thank you. So I am an attorney as well, started out in traditional health law, working for primarily hospital organizations. I took a strange turn early on in my career and started doing compliance officer work, which was highly unexpected when I was in law school. But it was a great experience for me because I had an opportunity to build programs and to get involved in a lot of interesting investigations and compliance related issues. Have also worked for some large academic research organizations, and then also in my legal career worked for life sciences companies on a variety of both regulatory and operational issues. I think for folks who know who I am, they would probably say my main expertise is in clinical research. So research on people, which could be bench research or research, bench to bedside, so to speak. Again, absolutely thrilled to be a part of this discussion today.
Wow. You both are probably just right on the forefront of so many innovative things that are happening. Awesome.
Fun and interesting and exciting time to be in healthcare right now, as I'm sure everyone that's on this call knows. But yeah, it's really a great time to be involved.
Absolutely. And actually, to go off on this point, I think, we can all collectively say that, 2020 has been a catalyst for so much, change and innovation and disruption, especially, within the digital health space. And so really curious, about your guys' take on this, but what sort of emerging technologies, that we're seeing within the digital health realm that risk any potential legal issues as they continue to, become more popular and more widely used?
So I can field that one just to begin. I'm seeing a tremendous increase in everything telehealth. So given the pandemic, we saw a real uptick in the use of telehealth technologies. And in that context, what we see are issues related to data privacy, and we've seen a lot of change in terms of the regulatory environment with that. We've seen change with respect to reimbursement rules around that, a lot of expansion, so that more people can access telehealth. So that's been one big change. And another big change, which I think Lisa can probably talk more about, is we've seen a real uptick in terms of technologies that allow for remote monitoring of patients, whether in the clinical setting or in the research setting, which has been really interesting. And I think with both of these, we'll see changes that extend well beyond the pandemic. But Lisa, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. In the research context alone, although this is certainly true on the clinical side as well, we've seen this onslaught of the implementation of clinical research management systems within organizations, both on the sponsor side of research as well as on the research site side. Which presumes that these systems can then speak to one another and do so in a way that protects the privacy of the patients themselves. So that in and of itself has created some interesting twists and turns for our clients, to say the least. The other thing that we're seeing a lot is, as Linda said, remote monitoring has been a big thing, which has a couple of interesting ripple effects. Number one, it places a lot of responsibilities on the patients themselves or the research participants, as the case may be, to either wear some sort of wearable that transmits data back to a sponsor or back to a research investigator, as the case may be, or to tune into a Zoom call or other type of webinar to communicate results, and things like that, which I'm sure has created some challenges for the researchers in particular to keep patients in these studies and keep them honest about the things they're responsible to do. But it also relies a lot on the technologies that are used to be able to collect this data, maintain the data, and then, to the extent necessary, transmit that data back to master databases or data warehouses, as the case may be. So managing all of that and integrating those technologies effectively and compliantly has been a huge challenge.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to touch a little bit on this, component of data, knowing that so many emerging digital health technologies are generating and using so much data, whether that is wearables or just patient input, tracking systems. What are some of the key legal issues to be aware of when it comes to this type of data?
Well, I think, there has been, as you say, a huge increase in both the use of data and the importance of that data, because that data has value. And so companies want to access as much and gather as much data as they possibly can. So with that, there has been a real evolution of developing laws to protect data. And what we have seen is that although we've had HIPAA for a long time, a lot of companies that handle this data are not HIPAA covered. And so the question is, how do we fill that gap? And what we have seen now is that there has been development of a patchwork of state laws that continue to develop. We just had a new law coming out of Virginia to protect data privacy. We're seeing that now in New York, where there has been a new proposal. We've seen a lot of activity, as you probably know, Nina, in California. And so that legal framework is in some instances inconsistent, and it becomes really important to figure out, well, how are we going to comply with all of this, because it's all so different. And what I usually recommend is to take a best practices approach, try to figure out, number one, what are the most stringent state laws right now, and can I employ a practice that complies with those, so that going forward, even as new state laws are coming out, I'm in a better position to anticipate that. And secondly, a big part of all of this is transparency, because what we see is that at the state level and at the federal level, there's a lot of enforcement activity around what we call unfair and deceptive practices, where states and the Federal Trade Commission will look at, say, an app or a wearable or any type of web-based tool, and figure out what the privacy policy that nobody thinks about actually says, and whether it's disclosing to the consumer how they're gathering information.
Right.
And then the third thing is consent. So people should have the opportunity to opt in to how their data is being used. And that's another area where there's been a real increased level of scrutiny. So I think those are a few to kind of keep in mind.
Wow, absolutely. And then Lisa, anything else to add to that?
Well, I mean, I think Linda certainly covered all of the high points. The only thing I would add is that states for many years have had very stringent rules around genetic related information, special protections, if you will, that have to be employed to secure and keep private any type of genetic data.
Mhm.
And that is, a particularly difficult task for any provider organization, thinking about, God forbid, back in the day of paper health records, where they would literally have to have a special file within a patient's medical record to keep this secure information. And then now in the digital health record space, having certain types of passwords necessary to get into that data. And then again, translating it to the research context, the same types of principles apply. And in research, it's very tricky because even within a typical research protocol around, let's say, cancer, or it could be cardiac care, inevitably there will be some test or procedure that's outlined for patients that in fact gathers genetic information.
Mm.
And that special category of data then has to be specially protected in accordance with state laws. And I think that a lot of research applications and vendors are trying to, as best they can, wrap their arms and legs around it to try to figure out how to do that.
Mhm.
So suffice to say, the states are keeping us very busy.
Awesome. And then kind of touching in a little bit more about the clinical research kind of component of all of this, what are some of the key issues to consider in clinical research specifically related to data health or digital health?
Digital health. Well, certainly, again, the onslaught of the clinical trial management systems and the privacy issues associated with that. It can be very costly to try to integrate those systems with an electronic health record. And unfortunately, as we sit today, there is no clinical research management system that completely and effectively integrates into an electronic health record other than Epic, which has its own research module. But even with that, there are special twists and turns that the IT folks have to implement in order to make that work. So that is, certainly one of the chief issues we deal with. Another is the fact that research at its very core has largely been done for years and years and years with research investigators keeping data on their laptops, their work laptops, which have to be mobile. They take them to different labs. They may take them into a clinical space in order to gather data on a patient during a patient visit or whatever the case may be. And I know that universities as well as life sciences companies have struggled with trying to implement the right safeguards around just the work laptops that people use for doing what they do. And certainly, last but not least, what complicates things is the use of handheld devices, whether it's an iPhone or a Samsung device of some kind. Everyone wants to make things easier and provide clinicians more access to information. And as a result, there are yet more types of security measures that have to be put in place around those types of devices too. So it's not a perfect scenario, to say the least, from a compliance perspective. There are lots of ways to muck it up. But at the same time, great strides are being made by these manufacturers of these devices to try to make them as secure as they need to be in compliance with HIPAA and other types of laws and regulations. So those are some of the issues I know my clients deal with every day.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think you touch on this really interesting point of just the evolution of technology. I feel like it's happening at such an exponential pace. There's the life cycle of something that's new is just shortening. And so really wanted to kind of get your take on how has technology changed the way that research is being conducted and has been conducted over the past 5-10 years.
Linda, do you want to address that and some of the digital health issues that you've done in the research space?
Sure. So I think as we've kind of touched on, this use of technology in research has changed a lot of things, because now you can conduct multi-site clinical trials where you have monitoring that's done remotely as opposed to in person, which was unheard of 10 years ago. And also what we saw a lot of, for example, in the context of COVID, was working with hospitals that were, trying to conduct research as they were trying to figure out treatments for patients, and consents were being done by iPhone because it was too dangerous to be going in and out of patient rooms at various points. Again, monitoring was being done remotely. There were AI tools that were being used to monitor whether or not, there was improvement, for example, or medical devices, software as medical devices used to monitor things like heart rate and so on. So it's just been a real change, a kind of a paradigm shift, I think, in terms of what we see. And with that, one thing from a legal standpoint that we're also seeing a lot of is that when hospitals and academic medical centers are utilizing all of these digital technologies in the context of research, those entities that they're partnering with are their vendors. And so, from a liability standpoint, if something goes wrong, the patient's going to turn to the hospital, not to the vendor, because from their standpoint, it's the hospital that they know about, not the vendor.
Right.
So, there's a lot more vetting of those vendors that is necessarily happening in terms of figuring out whether their platforms really are secure, figuring out whether they're really ready from a legal standpoint and a compliance standpoint to partner with the entity, pushing down a lot of indemnification obligations on the vendor. And so if you are the vendor, you have to be prepared for that. And that's also a big shift in terms of what we've seen in research over the last decade or so, because there have been a lot of data breaches that have happened that have been the result of vendor breaches over the last couple of years. So that's another big shift, I think, that we have seen.
Wow, very interesting.
But Nina, I think you raised a really great point, which is that the onslaught of all of this new technology is happening at such a fast clip that it's really hard for folks to keep up. And so, that's when, I put on my compliance sort of hat and I say, okay, so in light of this, what does my organization need to do in order to protect itself from violations of these laws and regulations? And I think that this is an outcry for all of us to think about what type of internal auditing and monitoring should I be doing around the compliance requirements that my organization has in certain areas, like privacy, like the protection of genetic information, all of these areas, good clinical practice standards. So one of the things that I know we're seeing a lot with our clients is that they are doing far more auditing and monitoring than they even did in the past, just to make sure that, with this fast pace, they're keeping up with their compliance obligations. And I think that's a good message for everybody to think about, because, a penny saved in doing this type of monitoring is definitely worth it in the long run.
Absolutely. And then speaking a little bit more about kind of compliance and regulatory bodies, was really curious, how has the FDA weighed in on digital health and a lot of those new technologies kind of coming out?
Well, I think it's been really interesting to see how the FDA has evolved over the last several years. And in the context of AI, for example, artificial intelligence, back in April of 2019, the FDA put out a paper saying, here's how we're going to start thinking about AI, because up to that point, the FDA really was not approving AI as a medical device unless the technologies were considered locked. In other words, they didn't continue to evolve with the technology, so that from a patient risk standpoint, the FDA had a better idea, of what the risk was if the technology was locked. But there's so much in terms of the evolution of these technologies that really benefits from the technology getting smarter, being iterative over time, that they've sort of revisited this. And so in the fall of last year, in October, they convened a panel of interested parties to talk about this. And then in January of this year, they issued an action plan where they talk about how they're going to issue guidance on this, but how their thinking has changed and how they really want AI developers to think very holistically in terms of what they're developing, to think in terms of, what are you designing? How's it going to affect the patient? What are the benefits to the patients? What are the risks to the patients? And really to think about the technology in holistic terms. So I think what we're seeing, and I think this is bipartisan because it has continued even after, the new administration, is that the FDA is really trying to adapt to this rapidly changing technology in digital health, to really open a path for new and improved tools, while also making sure that patients are protected.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Awesome. And so I think, we touched on this a little bit earlier, kind of regarding the relationship, especially within research. And so really want to learn a little bit more about, has the relationship between, life science companies and research sites changed, with this onset of broader technology options? I know we were mentioning earlier, now we can conduct research in so many different places. It really has widened the scope. So really wanted to get a little bit more of an understanding regarding that relationship between life science and research.
Yeah, it has changed dramatically over the last 10 years or so. Back in the day, we were used to research sites faxing case report forms to their sponsors to communicate the ongoing data collected as part of a research study. Nowadays, all sponsors, for all intents and purposes, are requiring electronic case report forms to be uploaded, which requires that wherever research is happening, there's some capability to have internet access and the ability to, in fact, do that electronically. So that has certainly been a change, and I think a positive change overall for organizations. One of the things that has also changed is the timeliness and the timeframes within which sponsor organizations are requiring data to be communicated back to them, and in terms of when it's collected. And because of that, it has sort of sped up the pace with which research is done in the typical clinical setting. So that's been an adjustment. And I can't tell you how many research coordinators we talk to who will say, my goodness, I'm tearing my hair out. I've got, more patients to manage than I've ever had in the past. And the expectations are so high, I'm not sure I can keep up. Needless to say, organizations really, I think, have to think long and hard on the site side about how they're resourcing their clinical trial work. Do they have enough research coordinators to be able to compliantly collect and transmit the data in accordance with the timeframes that are required by the sponsors? So that's one of the big changes. And then, of course, adhering to the necessary privacy obligations associated with that, and making sure that both the physical security of the documentation is kept where it needs to be, and that the connections between the sponsors and the research sites are kept, in accordance with the security requirements under the various rules of HIPAA. There's an interesting rule in the research world. It's 21 CFR Part 11, which requires organizations to have security assessments done on clinical research systems to make sure that their signature capabilities are, their e-signing, if you will, is accurate and, is kept within the security measures required, so that has added an additional burden on research sites to have to do that, because there are some sponsors that say, I'm not going to sign you on as a clinical trial site unless I'm confident that your systems comply with 21 CFR Part 11 and the other rules. So these are challenges, again, we didn't have to even think about 10 years ago, but they're very real now, and they're only going to get bigger over time.
Right. As some things get easier, some things get a little more harder. So it's kind of a balance, I guess.
Definitely.
Also, just to add to what Lisa had said, in terms of life sciences companies and their relationships with research and with research entities, with the onset of precision medicine, which has become really huge now, and almost a matter of course with respect to how research is done. What we see are life sciences companies that specialize, for example, in genetic testing and genetic sequencing, using artificial intelligence, for example, to help inform researchers with respect to a particular disease state that they're researching and dealing with. And so this company that would be partnering with the researchers is now doing that in a pretty seamless way. They will be contracting with or developing their own lab developed tests to take the genetic sequence, run the test, run it through, and figure out from a precision medicine standpoint what that means with respect to this particular patient. And then the researcher who's at the academic medical center level takes that data, and that translates into the research protocol for the patient. And that's a pretty new development, I would say, in the last few years. And it goes back again from a legal standpoint to what I was saying earlier in terms of vetting the vendor, because in the example that I've just laid out, you have a vendor that has a whole host of regulatory obligations itself, from lab regulation to genetic testing privacy rules, as Lisa alluded to earlier, to again, transparency in terms of how the data that company is collecting is going to be used. And so there are a lot of moving parts in terms of developing a much more seamless way of healthcare delivery, sort of behind the scenes. That's where the legal issues come up. But it's a really exciting time in terms of patient care and in terms of opportunities for life sciences companies to partner with research entities. They just have to be prepared with respect to how those partnerships play out in a legal way in the contractual context.
Absolutely. And kind of to that point, we actually have a question from the audience about how much money is being spent on security by businesses each year. Is more money being spent on security and compliance and privacy than the actual products?
That's a great question.
I don't know the dollar amounts, but I do know anecdotally in our experience that at least in the early stages, the answer is yes. Sometimes there is a greater amount being spent on data privacy and security measures than the value of the product itself. But that's because if there are problems with that, the problems, if there's a breach, particularly given what we have seen in the last couple of years, as I was mentioning earlier, with respect to vendor breaches, liability can put that vendor out of business. And so in addition to cyber insurance, which we're seeing a lot more of now, which is a good thing, that kind of expenditure is sort of necessary in order to protect against what may be the undoing of the company itself. So we do see a lot more expenditure, and sometimes, yes, it can be at a greater amount than the product may be worth at that given point, but it's protection against future harm.
And when we think about it, Nina, privacy issues and the protection of people's health information is something that we can all relate to.
Mhm.
And because we can all relate to that, it is so personal, it is so sensitive. And as a result, we tend to, take whatever precautions are necessary to protect it. And at the end of the day, again, a penny saved is whatever. You just want to make sure that you've got the necessary protections in place if you're going to be a custodian of that type of information. So it's money well spent in the end.
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you for the audience member who asked that great question. And I think, this is such a great place to stop. I know we're a minute out, but I wanted to thank you both, Linda and Lisa, so much for a really engaging discussion. I think these are questions that are, have been on the forefront for a lot of people, especially now, and I think will continue to be very, very important as we see, the next wave of digital health products. So I wanted to thank you both today for being here. And we also have some great upcoming events for our Women's Health Tech Wednesday series, so be sure to check those out. And we are also on social media, so also check us out on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Just wanted to thank you both again, Linda and Lisa, for this incredible discussion.
Thank you so much, Nina.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Wonderful. All right, everyone, have a great rest of the day.